So just to give a recap as to what we have covered, we saw what was, what do we actually use the orchestrator for, and then the orchestrator is basically going to be used for deployment, monitoring, and then in case you want to, run a process or monitor a process, all those kind of activities we are going to see in the orchestrator. So whether it is an attended automation or whether it is an unattended automation, you're going to install it or you're going to deploy it in the orchestrator, right? So just as we were having a UiPath Studio and a inbuilt robot that was existing, that was executing your code from the, or your workflow from the UiPath Studio, similar to that, you have to create robots in the orchestrator to execute your process that is deployed. So once we see all the processes are deployed, you need to have robots in the orchestrator as well to go ahead and execute your processes. So if you have a process deployed, you need to make sure that you have robots also there available so that these robots will be executing your processes. Okay, so what actually happens is, as you have the number of robots, this is what we talk about licenses and the number of users. So it could be you could have many number of robots to execute certain list of tasks, certain list of processes. So it is not that one robot is dedicated for one process. It is that you can have one robot available for executing multiple processes. So it works on the priority of the process, and then we go ahead and it will go ahead and execute the process. Okay, so this is what we saw, and we also saw what was environment. So what was an environment? Environment is nothing but a grouping of robot. So which means you can have an UAT environment. So if you have 10 licenses or 10 robots available, which means you can group 2 for UAT environment, 3 for production environment, and 3 for your development environment. So like that you can group it, okay, or your testing environment, whatever you have. So you can group your robots, so that environments is nothing but grouping of robots, so that your robots will be executing. So you need not go ahead and change your process again and again. So once you tag it, so basically a process will be tagged to an environment and then executed via a robot. So this is what the pictures that we saw yesterday. Now today what we are going to see is, we'll go ahead and we'll continue with from where we left off, right? So we are going to go ahead and continue as to how we are going to deploy a particular process, and from there, how are we going to go ahead and take it as a orchestrator process and go ahead and execute it. Okay. So I was talking about, let's take a simple automation, right? A simple automation, a process automation where I just displayed a message box. So let's take the same example. Okay, if you see here, there is something called detected attended robot as the license type. So based on the terms and conditions, a license should be only for used for running and debugging purposes. Okay, remember yesterday I was talking about, if you have your robot available as attended automation, attended robot, and you want to change it to studio, it will not allow you to edit your code in the studio. So once you have created your code, once you have moved your process to orchestrator, and your orchestrator is now executing the process as an attended robot or as an unattended robot. Okay, so which means your robot is now created. It could be attended or it could be unattended. In either which ways, when it is created, you won't be able to modify your UiPath Studio. Okay, you will be getting this particular message. So in your UiPath Studio, you will be getting this particular message, whether it is attended or unattended. If your robot type is attended or unattended, you won't be able to modify your code. Okay, because this happens only in the community edition, because we are connecting to the same machines. Okay, because I said we are going to hypothetically imagine that we are the developer and we are also the user. Since we connected to the same machine, it is going to have this particular problem. But in the enterprise edition, you may not have, but this message will be displayed. Okay, whether you have here in this part, I'm saying you have here as, I'm going into demo.uipath.com. Here we chose the type, right? Attended or unattended. So based on this type only, it will react in your studio. So your studio is going to be, if it is attended or unattended, your studio will say you will not be able to modify your code. They should be only used for running and debugging purposes. Editing is restricted. Okay. So if you get a message like this, you have to go ahead and change your robot type to studio. So this is where, which means your code is already deployed and you are running your processes. That's what it understands. Okay. Now there is a defect and you want to go and retouch your code. So at that time, what you're going to do is you're going to go ahead and change it to studio or a studio X. Here a studio and a studio X has right now been changed to RPA developer, right? So I'll change it to RPA developer pro. Now the robot has been successfully created. It's still in the red. Now it has changed to green the moment I launch my UiPath Studio. So now I should be able to see my code in a editable format. Okay. This is only when you have your information working as a developer. Other than that, you may not be. So now if you see, this particular information is not there. Okay. So yesterday we said we are going to have this particular information created as a message box. So this is your message box. Whenever you have message box, it's going to be an attended automation, correct? But in our case, what we'll do is we are not going to bother whether it is an attended or an unattended automation. You could still go ahead and we are going to deploy it. So how we are going to deploy? So now I said we are going to imagine ourselves as a developer. I am going to be the person who is going to deploy into the orchestrator. So where does it go? It goes into the area called packages. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a or I'm going to compile this. Say this is my finished version of my code. What I'm going to do is I'm going to make this entire information as a bundle called package. Okay, we call it as a .nupkg file. Okay, .nupkg package. So this is the file that will get created once you're ready for your deployment. So you already have your information available as your project folder, right? Now what happens is this entire structure will get bundled into a project name .nupkg package. Okay, it's nothing but a zip file kind of a thing. So you zip it, you move your content to the orchestrator and you have to unzip it. So that is what happens in your orchestrator. Okay, so now how do I deploy it? When I'm connected to the orchestrator, so which means I have already have my connection available. Okay, so this connectivity also I've given you as a separate video, so you can go ahead and connect for yourself. So when your connectivity is done, you can directly go ahead and install it. Okay, so how do you install it? This is my finished piece of code. So I go to publish and I'm going to install it. The moment I say publish, it will get automatically, a wizard will come and automatically the deployment will happen. So here it says, what is your package name? So this is going to be my package name. So J, what is the current version? So this is going to be my current version of the package. Is there a release notes? Say a description of your project. And where do you want to publish? Do you want to publish in the orchestrator tenant or you want to publish it locally? If you say custom, it is in your local folder, in your system folder. If you say orchestrator tenant, then it is going to be your orchestrator tenant. Okay. Whichever orchestrator is connected to, that is what it will take, right? And then you have your certificates and everything. So this is not required. You just do a publish. So automatically your package will be created and it will be published. So this is your package that was created. Okay. So where will this package information be available? This is going to be now directly, it is deployed in the orchestrator. You go back to your stuff. You go to automations. Sorry, you go to tenants. You go to packages. You will be now having the package called J_orchestrator1. So this is your package. So now what happened was you bundled everything and you created a .nupkg file. Okay. So that NUPUG file automatically came into your orchestrator. So if you go ahead and view this particular information, so let me go ahead and click on more actions. So in your more actions, if you go and view versions, so what is going to happen is it will show what is the current version that is available. So 1.0.1, this is the version we currently deployed, right? So as you go ahead and change your information, you are going to go ahead and see the information in your log. Okay. So far it is inactive. Let's come back to that particular point, right? So if you want to view your code, so you go and say explore package. Okay. So this is your, all your number of versions will be available. So if you go click on this particular version, it will give you the entire opening of your project folder. So if you go, how many number of XAML files that you have, that will be displayed here. So you go and click on main.xaml file, whatever is your code, you will be able to see, and whatever is your properties, you will be able to see. This is a miniature of your studio. So how many number of files you have, those many number of files you will be able to see. So what did I give? What was the properties? So you will see all, if hundreds of information are there, you will see all the hundreds of information. You will see all the variables, you will see all the arguments, and everything will be there. And similarly, your dependencies. So in case you are getting an external dependency, like your external, if you have a reusable component which you have put it as a dependency, then you have to bring the reusable component also here. Okay, so all these things are going to be chosen. So if you go and republish it again, which means there will be another version that will be created. So if I go and republish the same thing, or if you're going to make a change and I'm going to republish it, let me put another message box which says, let me do a publish. Now it will automatically create a newer version. So the same thing, I'm going to go ahead and publish. So right. So if I go ahead and explore package once again, you will be seeing two packages that will be available, right? So if you want to compare between two packages also, you can go ahead and compare. So it will ask you what is the comparison that you need to do. Compare, it will give you the list of comparison that is available. Okay, so you can go ahead and differentiate between all your files or your XAML files, what is the difference between your versions and everything. So this is what we do in your package. Okay, now this is a direct publishing to your particular orchestrator. Now you don't have the option to directly publish. Okay, so in terms of when we are not connected to an SV and when we are not connected to certain things, we won't be able to say, suppose I am the I was talking about only a certain set of people will be having their connectivity, right? So suppose that you do not have a direct connectivity into your studio. So here you are not having a direct connectivity to the orchestrator. So in those terminologies, how are we going to do? We are going to publish it locally, and we will create a particular package. So what will happen is you're going to go ahead and publish, and you will go ahead, instead of publishing in the orchestrator, so that time orchestrator won't be visible. So if I'm disconnected, orchestrator will not be visible. So only custom will be visible. So you go ahead, and this is your custom folder. You go ahead and publish it here. So automatically, if you see in this particular folder, there will be a j underscore nupug file that is getting created. So if this is your nupug file that has been created, what you can do is you can anywhere, you can move this particular file anywhere to anybody else's computer, right? To anybody else's computer, and you can go ahead and use, I'm into the packages folder, I'm into the packages location. So I can go ahead and simply upload. So the moment I go and upload, I can give the information. I can choose the upload. So automatically a nupug file will be created. So if you go ahead and see, there will be 3 versions of this particular file. Okay, so there are 2 ways. Ideally we will be using this way only, because most of the time we might not be connected directly to the orchestrator, so we might be using this way. Or there's another option where you can directly publish the information. So now you have bundled it, right? So after bundling it only, you have the package name available. Now this you have to unbundle it so that it will run it as a process. End of the day, you want it as a process to be executed, right? So how are we going to go and unbundle it is, so similarly, there's another option called, there's a library here. So library is nothing but all your components that you have. So libraries are nothing but all your dependencies that you have. So we were going and seeing in manage packages in your studio, right? So all that information. So basically your UiPath.excel.activities. So everything will be already deployed here. So if suppose you are having additional libraries, you need to bring those libraries here, okay, as a part of your package. So it will get automatically installed. Okay, so in case you have reusable component, then it will automatically come here and it will sit here, right? So this is your packages. So now in your packages, now you have a package which is the bundled version. Now you have to unbundle it to open it as a process. So for process, what we are going to go ahead and do is go to your default folder. You will be able to see automations, right? So in your automations, you have a tab called processes. Now in your processes, now you have a bundled package. From there, you have to unbundle it so that a process will be visible, right? So you go ahead and you click on new. You select your package. So what was our package name? It was J underscore orchestrator 1, right? So go ahead and select your package. So now it will be saying, okay, this is the package, you want to unbundle it. Which version of the package you want to unbundle it? You can choose between the version. Okay, so there is 1.0.3. This is the latest version. I'm going to unbundle it. So if you see, there is a display name. So obviously this was the package name. So when you have it as a process, it will add the environment name by default. If you do not, so that is what I said. Every process is indirectly tagged to an environment. Okay, so that's how a robot will get executed. So thereby, if you see, you have to, when you're installing a process, you need to go ahead and tag it to an environment. You need to tag it to an environment. So that is why we have an environment folder here, and you have a job priority, which is a normal, high and a low priority. Usually you go with the normal priority based on whatever is your project requirement. You go with your project priority as such. So if at all you're receiving inputs or output values, you're taking it as a sub process and you will be receiving input and output, then you get mention here. You go and create it, so automatically there will be a process that is getting created. So if you go ahead and see, the version of the project is, or the process is 1.0.3. okay, so far what we did what was a package. So you created the package by using publish. So from there it came onto the packages folder, and from the packages you unbundled it in the processes, which is the default folder, automations and processes. You unbundled it, you tagged it to an environment, and when you're executing the process, one of the robot in that environment will execute. Okay, and where will all this happen? There is a parameter called missions. Okay, now back to our orchestrator. So now if I want to execute it, how am I going to execute? I'm going to go ahead and execute like this. Okay, so you have two ways of execution. So this was basic. So I can go and execute like this. But if I execute like this, what is going to happen? My robot only will be executing. So my robot needs to be in attended or unattended mode, right? So since I changed it in the studio, I will change it back to attended mode. Okay, so now our installation is complete. No more we are a developer, right? So no more we are a developer. Now our installations are all complete. Now you are going to talk about the execution of your particular process. Okay, so this is about end users mission. So now you are connected to you have made your orchestrator connectivity between your end user and between the orchestrator, right? The end users mission and the orchestrator. So this is what we were doing. Now what we are going to do is, our process is now already deployed. So if I need to execute the process here, so I am going to talk about, this is a separate scenario. I'm going to talk about the end user. Okay, So from this, our particular activity is done. Our developer's job is done. So from here, you're going to talk about either the quality team or the end user who will be testing your stuff, right? So from here, if I need to execute this, so what is going to happen is I'm going to execute it based on the kind of automation it is going to be. So however I'm going to execute, I'm going to execute it via a job. So when I execute a process, you need to have something called a history of what kind of execution happened in that particular folder. So you're going to, for that particular process. So you're going to have a particular process. All processes will be executed via jobs. So this will be executed via a jobs called whatever is your job. So this will be job underscore process one underscore environment. Okay. Now whatever you are doing, this will get executed, and whoever is the robot will get executed. So if we have robot 1, that will be executing this particular information. So where is it going to be executing? If it is an attended automation, it will be executing on the end user's mission. Okay, so this is how it will be executing. If it is an unattended automation, whichever mission that you're going to tell, that particular mission, it will be running as a background automation or as a without any user intervention. Okay, so which means as an end user, in the case of an attended automation, what do they require? They require two information. Okay, one is they require, so the license or the softwares that they require is going to be, they require orchestrator connectivity. Okay, because this particular details needs to be connected to the end user's mission. So only if the end user's mission is connected, then you will be able to see all this particular process happening in the end user's mission. Okay, so if that is not the case, if the orchestrator connectivity is not there, this will not at all run. So basically they will also need to go and do the orchestrator connectivity to the orchestrator. We were talking about this. So basically when you're going to talk about, you're having an end user. So the current version, whatever is there, the similar scenario you will be doing in your real-time enterprise edition also. Okay, and the number of licenses, and based on whatever your requirement is, the number of, you will be using a standard mission or a mission template, a floating robot or a standard robot. Accordingly, the number of users and the number of licenses will be changing, and you can cater to the needs, right? But however the scenario is, you will be following this particular scenario. So you have an end user mission, and what are the softwares that the end user will be required. So if it is an attended automation, the end user will also need to make the connectivity to that particular process. So which means from the end user mission, we were able to do with the UiPath assistant, right? Orchestrator settings, give the mission key and all those things. So you should still be able to go ahead and give that. You can give the mission key, or you can go and give the server key, and they will be requiring. So which means they require orchestrator access, right? So you need to procure an access for the end user. So when we are talking about the end user itself, we are talking about their particular username as a user in your orchestrator. So only then they will be able to pick this particular process. Then for it to execute, it is an attended automation. So obviously if it is an attended automation, there will be a robot which will be executing from the orchestrator. Similarly, it will be executing in their mission. So you need to have the UiPath agent. Okay, so we had so this is going to be again UiPath. Let me put it as UiPath assistant. Right? So as a developer, as we required UiPath Studio and UiPath Assistant, similarly when they are going to connect to the orchestrator, they require this assistant to make the connectivity, right, to their mission. So they require this particular software, and they require the orchestrator access. They do not require the UiPath Studio because they are not going to view the code. So this is how an end user, when it is an attended automation, will be available. So similarly, when it is an unattended automation, you may require the same information, but the orchestrator access may not be used for them. So you not have a username which will be actually, you might not have a dedicated mission with a dedicated username, because it might be running on a dedicated, a different set of, maybe a server, or all the processes may be running on the orchestrator server itself, or a different machine, or the end user's machine, right? Because it is either a background process or long running process which will not have user intervention. So all these things may not be required. You can do everything from the orchestrator itself. Okay, so how are we going to execute in this term? When we are doing this particular stuff as an attended automation, then you have to execute it via the agent only. Okay, when it is an attended automation, the okay, so when it is going to be an attended automation, the user will be actually running that particular thing. If it is an ad hoc or if it is a schedule, it's going to run on the user mission. So if it is going to run on the user mission, they need to make the connectivity between the assistant and their particular mission and the orchestrator, right? So these two information will be required. They need to have the license for the UiPath assistant, which means that software needs to be installed. And from where are they going to, from where are they going to go ahead and execute the thing? When it is an attended automation, you can execute it from the UiPath assistant only. Okay. Right. So I should be able to install, I should be able to execute it. Now I am the user, I am going to execute. So what has happened? The developer has moved this particular process as a package. Now from the package, the bot controller has installed it as a particular process, right? After this, the developer's information has gone. Next, the end user, I need to make the connectivity. So I will make the connectivity between the UiPath assistant and between the orchestrator access. So now the connectivity is done. I'm going to execute the particular software. So the particular process automation. So how will I execute? I'm going to execute it from here only. Okay, the ideal cases you have to execute it from here only. Okay, you still have a shortcut to execute it from the orchestrator, but most of the time it will not allow to execute it from the orchestrator. So the ideal way is you have to execute it from your UiPath assistant only. Okay, you have a mobile version also as for the UiPath assistant. So the user could go ahead and install in their particular mobile, and from the mobile with the same access, they will be able to go ahead and execute the process. So now how will the execution happen? So I am not anywhere touching my UiPath Studio. Now that it is deployed, I'm going to go ahead. The first time you have to install your particular process. So you go ahead and install your particular process, which means it is there in the orchestrator. You need to bring it to your mission, right? So you're going to bring it to your mission, which will be installation. And after the installation is going to happen, you're going to run this particular process. So from your end user's mission, I am the end user, I'm going to run the process like this. So automatically the process will be running. So if you see, the process is running. So automatically the messages are coming. Hi, welcome to the orchestrator version 1.0.2. Right? So right now the process has been executed. So this is how you will be executing the process in terms of a attended automation. So the end user only will be executing the thing. It might be an ad hoc, or it might be, most of the time it will be an ad hoc thing only. Okay, whenever you have it as an attended automation, we will not schedule the jobs. We will go ahead and execute it. We'll give the control to the user. From the UiPath assistant, they will be executing it. Right? Now when they are executing it, what happens in the background? So when they are executing it, which means this particular process got executed, right? Though it got executed from the UiPath assistant, there would be a job that is getting created for this particular process. So which means you need to see who executed what, at what time this process got executed and everything, right? So that is why we create jobs for every scenario. Whenever a process is getting executed, a job will be created. So that you can see in the jobs folder. Okay, so if you see the process, yeah, J underscore orchestrator 1 was executed via robot 1 on this particular user, by this particular user on this particular mission. This is the environment, what was the mode of the robot, and what was the status, and who executed. The assistant executed. Okay, so similarly, if you are, I'm not sure if it runs. Similarly, if you want to execute it from the orchestrator, this is not something you need to do in case of attended automation. It will not allow you. Okay, so let me go and start a job. Okay, you can choose the process name. You can choose the job priority. It will not show you any of the robots. So you cannot execute a you cannot execute a process which is an attended automation through the orchestrator. You can always execute it via UiPath assistant only. Okay, so here no robots are displayed because your robot type is attended automation. So there are no robots available. So you will not be able to execute your process as an attended automation. Only unattended robots will be displayed here. Okay, so always your process needs to be executed via the UiPath agent or the assistant only. So we are talking about, now we are going into the unattended mode. So the same process, we are going about unattended mode. So what happens in an unattended mode? The same process. Okay. So you need to have an unattended robot available. So we have the process already available. The same process, I'm going to execute it in the unattended mode. So how do I execute it? You go to the robot. You changed it to unattended mode. In our case, we just have one robot. Usually there will be multiple robots, right? So you can go ahead and choose the unattended robot and you say you can execute. So here you have to give the password of your system. Okay. Since I have just one robot, I'm changing it here. In the real-time scenario, you will have one robot as attended, one robot as unattended. That time you can simply choose the unattended robot and you can execute. Okay. Since we do not have the multiple robots option, I'm changing the same robot with a different type. Okay. Now I'm going to go ahead and execute it as an unattended automation. Okay. So how the execution happens in terms of the unattended automation. Right? So this is going to be attended automation. So how do we get it via unattended automation? We are going to use the same scenario. Okay. The first thing is okay. The ideal way of executing an unattended automation is you have to execute it via orchestrator jobs. So you have to go ahead and execute it from the processes page itself. So like that you have to execute. This is the ideal way of execution. Okay. If the user says, okay, I don't want this, I will do it, you know, though it is an unattended automation, I will still go ahead and execute it, means this option is still available. They can execute it from the UiPath assistant also. But the ideal way of executing the unattended automation is via orchestrator jobs or triggers. So what is an orchestrator job? We know, right? So what is an orchestrator trigger? Trigger is nothing but a scheduled process. So you have this. So before, what was happening? It was not displaying the process, right? So now I'm going to go ahead and say start. This is the process. I'm going and doing starting the job. Okay. Before, it was not displaying the robot here when we were doing unattended automation. Since we changed it to unattended mode, now it says the robot name. Okay. So you can execute it in the unattended form. Okay. So now also there will be a process that will be created. It says running. It has been executed manually. Okay, so it is successful. So if you want it to be a scheduled process, you can go to triggers, do add a trigger. Select your particular process. Okay. You can choose between what are your specific robots, all robots. If you say a specific robots, if you have 10 robots, you can choose. If you say all robots, any one of the robot which is available will be taking your particular process. Job priority is nothing but the process priority. We give high, normal, low, right? So that will be the priority of your particular thing. And what is the duration? So if you, what is your duration? So every 1 minute you want to do. And if you have any, your calendar, like you might be working on a different calendar, you might be working on a US calendar, you can set up this in your particular admin page. So you can go ahead and set up your calendar working days in your, so basically based on that, you can do your setup. So you can give the day, end date, you can give the start date, and all those things you'll be able to do. So once I go ahead and say add, my trigger will get created. So this is what you do for scheduling a particular job. After scheduling the particular process, you need to make sure you have to start at least once. You have to start it. Okay. So I'm starting a particular thing manually. So once I start it manually, the trigger is started. So every 1 minute, there will be a job that will be created. So if you see, the first thing is a manual process. Okay. After that, every 1 minute, there will be a job that will be created by the source called the trigger. Okay. So unattended automation, two ways you will be able to execute. So one is via a trigger or via a job. That is the ideal way from the orchestrator. And in case you have an additional requirement from the user saying, I want to execute it from the UiPath assistant, the trigger will still be there or the job will still be there. They can also use the UiPath assistant to go ahead and run it. So when they are running that particular thing, so see if there's the second thing that has been created by the trigger. So when they are running it from the UiPath assistant, the same process will run and give you the information called assistant. Okay, so in between these two processes, there will be one more process which will say assistant. So you can monitor this. So every time a job runs, you will be able to see who ran it, what was the information, when it started, what was all the things. So you will be able to see. Okay, so this is how your jobs, your triggers and everything is being run. So now let me go ahead and stop the trigger if I don't disable the trigger, otherwise it will be executing every 1 minute. So now my trigger is disabled. Okay, so you have your process from your, you created a package. I mean, you bundled it to a package. You brought it here, unbundled to a process. You tagged it to an environment, and via the environment, one particular robot will be executing your process. How it will execute in through a job. So a job will use this particular robot and execute the process, and where it will execute on the end user's mission or on the orchestrator mission or wherever on a particular mission. Okay, so that's how the entire information goes through. Okay, so most of the thing will be working on these scenarios only. So based on whatever is your requirement, your execution methodology will change. If it is an attended automation, the user is given the control, so they can only do the execution via the UiPath assistant. If it is an unattended automation, you need to do it via the orchestrator only. That is the ideal method. Also, you can do it through the UiPath assistant. So any which ways, the end user has to have the UiPath assistant software to be installed on their mission, so that they do the connectivity to the orchestrator, so that whenever they require the automation to be run, they can execute it from the UiPath assistant. Okay, so these are the number of processes. Jobs are nothing but the number of processes that you have. Okay, assume these are all scheduled processes. Okay, so you will have these many number of processes that are scheduled to run on these particular dates. Okay, and these are going to be the priorities. So you have just one robot available. Now consider you just have one robot. So what will be the order in which the job will be executing? A very important question in terms of certification and in terms of your interviews. Okay, generally we ask this particular question. So how do you go ahead and execute? So you have something that is already created and scheduled. Okay, in terms of an ad hoc thing, then it is going to be fine. An unattended robot will be ad hocly running it. But say it is a scheduled trigger is there, so which means these number of jobs will be created, or the trigger has already created these many number of jobs, and these are the dates in which it needs to execute. So how it will be executing? The based on how it will be executing is, it will take the priority. So there are two high priority things, and it will see when it needs to be executed. This is a one-time activity. This is a scheduled activity. So when there is a no date, okay, which means it is going to run every day on a particular time, right? So when it is only going to be a date is visible, you might be thinking that, okay, this is going to be executed only on 17th. Okay, so the priority in which it will be executing is, this will be execution priority will be 1. So which is going to be a daily job which is coming with a high priority. The next high is going to be this particular one. So today's particular job, ad hocly somebody has scheduled it for today. So it is this particular job one, or this particular process one, is going to be executed only today. So that's why we have a today's date. This is like, this particular job is going to be, or the process is going to be executed every day on a particular time. That is why you don't have a date parameter here. So what is the next thing? You have the high priority available here, but this is again with the tomorrow's date. So we are not going to execute it today, right? So we go back to the normal priority. Again, normal priority is a job without a date. So which means it is a scheduled job which will run every day. So this will be executed via the third priority. Okay, now this job also is completed. So what will be the next process that will be executing? The low one on today's date. Okay, and tomorrow it will start with this particular stuff. Okay, it will not start with this particular stuff. It will go to this particular stuff, right? And then it will come to this particular stuff. Okay, did we understand the difference? And then the next one will be 8th. Okay, so today what happens is, this will be the next day's date, right? So what will happen is, based on your priority and based on whether it is running every day, that particular job will be taken first, or that particular process will be taken first. So high, and it is an everyday process that is running. So 1, and your timelines also will be given. So I'm just mentioning the date if everything is having the same timelines is what I'm saying. Okay, so the time also will be given, right? But here I'm not going into the time details. So here if you have high, and which is an everyday scheduled job, that will be taken first, and the next one is again, and high will be looked on. Okay, high with today's date, so this will be worked on. And what is the next high? This is with the tomorrow's date, so this will not be looking. Then comes the normal priority. So normal priority again is going to be an everyday job, so it gets executed. Then comes the low, so this gets executed. So the next day when it is going to start, it will take the same thing. So there is a high which is an everyday job that will be executed, and then there is a high with a 18th date, so that will be executed, and then comes the normal priority. Okay, so this is how, if you have a single robot, or if you even have 2 robots, okay, the priority in which the 2 robots will be executing, the order in which the process will be executing is this only. Okay, maybe robot 1 will be executing this after robot 1 completes, this will be executed. So the order in which will be the same thing, but there might be 2 robots that will be executing, right? So that is how the job priority or the process priority is identified. So based on the process priority is the same thing that the job inherits. So based on these 2 priorities only, the robot will be executing the process. Okay, right? So you have different information. Yeah, so you have, yeah, one more thing that I left to say was, so you have your package. So you have your packages, right? Okay, so now the current package is J_Orchestrator 1.0.3, right? That was the current package. Now that package only we unbundled it and we created as a process, right? We created as a process with 1.0.3. Now consider I'm creating a new version. So there is a new version that will be created. Publish. I'm creating a new version. Okay, it created in the local. So publish. I'm going to Orchestrator tenant, and it gets published directly. Okay, so there's 1.0.5 that got published directly. There's a 1.0.4 that got published directly, but that will be available only in the packages. It will not directly correlate to the process. Okay, right? So what you need to do is, if you see, it says before it was green and it was saying 1.03, but now since I published a new package, it says that there is an additional package, updates are available. Okay, it will not automatically update. It will give the option to the user to say, or to the bot controller to say, there is an update available. Do we need to go and update it? It just gives you the information. It will not do anything straightforward. Okay, if there is updates available, you can choose between yes, I want to update it, or you can leave it like that. So in case you say yes, you want to update it, you can go to the tenant, the packages. Okay, so go to that view versions. So if you see, currently it is on active 1.03. So if you want to make the other one to active, you go ahead and you will say, where is that? I think update package. Oh, they have changed the look and feel. Okay. So this will say this is the current version that you want to upgrade. Before it was like this, you will be going ahead and you will be clicking on view versions and you click on the inactive thing and there will be an upgrade, or here you will be able to upgrade it. So here you will go and upgrade it. So that's how you will be able to upgrade it. Okay. So that is how it will be in the current version of the enterprise edition. I think now they have changed the community edition. So here they have given it as upgrade process. Go ahead and choose the upgraded version. Okay, upgrade. Are you sure you want to upgrade the selected process? Okay. So now automatically your thing would have been changed to, this would be changed to active. Okay. Now back to your processes, automations, processes. Now it turned to green again. Okay, so only if this is a manual process, this is a manual process that that you have to do. It will not, whenever there's an upgraded version, the orchestrator will not upgrade the version automatically. We only need to go and upgrade this. Again, this and a certification question and the interviews we might be asking. Okay, so that is whether it will be automatically updated or no, it will not be automatically updated. It is a manual process. It is a manual process. You need to go and upgrade your version for the process. Okay, so let's go ahead and, right, so the packages are going to be, these are the packages display the ones that is published from the UiPath. So the packages are nothing but the bundled version of your particular process automation from the UiPath Studio. So it comes down to the orchestrator. So you have two options. You can directly publish it or you can manually go and upload it. Okay, so similarly you can also download it. You can right click, and if you want that package to be, once it is already installed and you want it to be downloaded to a different studio, you can download it and you can view your code. So that is also available. Okay, versioning comes into existence whenever you're going to publish the orchestrator. Then you have the package version. So whenever you have a package version which is going to be active, means the current version is currently used as a process. Then the inactive is going to be, it's currently deployed but there is no process to be using it. Okay, so active and inactive will be, active will be the current, how many ever 10 versions you have, there will be only one active version. So that is what a package. So now, as I explained, this is going to be a package explorer. So you will be able to view your code, whatever you did, you will be able to compare, and you will be able to view your XAML file, the workflow in your package explorer. So you can go and view it as, click on the three dots and you can go ahead and view your particular piece of workflow that you created. So in order for you to compare, you can still go ahead and compare as well. So you will have your variables panel also to be visible. Your properties also will be visible. So this is your orchestrator active packaging. So yesterday we saw this one, right? So the process. So this is what I was saying. A process is nothing but the unbundled version of your package. So you unbundle that particular package and you're going to execute it as a process. So you can execute your process from your process page. From the jobs page also you can execute. You can go and click on new job and you can choose the process and you can execute, and you will execute it via the robot agent or the robot assistant. Okay, based on attended or unattended automation, the ways of execution will be different. Attended automation cannot be executed from the orchestrator page, because attended robots will not be visible when you need to select your robots for execution of the job. Okay, at that time you will be executing only from the UiPath assistant. So again, the jobs actually we were talking about, what are where you can go ahead and execute, right? From your robot tray is nothing but from your automations page, jobs. From your UiPath assistant, again it will be showing all the trigger information. Sorry, attended mode will be from your robot tray. Robot tray and assistant is going to be the same thing. Okay, from your robot tray and your assistant. Your unattended is going to be either via jobs or via triggers page or via processes page. Any which ways you can go and execute it. Anywhere you go and click on the play button, you are in the process, it will be executing. Through the triggers you can execute. Through the jobs you can execute. Okay, so this is how you will be doing. And there is a priority in which, there is a status in which the jobs will be executing. Okay, there are different statuses. So this is again a very important question in terms of certification. So what is the status of the job? So when it is going to be on different statuses, it denotes different parameters. So you have a pending. So before understanding this, we'll understand a concept called what is stop and how will you actually stop a job. Okay, so basically there are two options available in your particular job. Let me go on to the jobs page. So if you right click, you will see stop, kill, resume, restart. Okay, so these are all the actions that you can do with respect to a job. Okay, so a job is running, right? A job is running means a process is executing. Indirectly it means that only. So a job is executing and somebody goes and you want to stop the job. Okay, so when you stop the job, what it means, your code needs to be stopped, right? Or your process needs to be stopped, or your workflow needs to be stopped. So we have an activity called should stop, right? So when you are going to actually view your code, now say this is your code. Okay, so in your code, you're executing this particular piece of code via a job, and somebody in the orchestrator page, they have stopped the job. So once in this particular process, they have stopped the job. But will that stopping have an impact on this particular program? It will not have an impact. Okay, because we are not at all checking anywhere whether the job is stopped or not. Okay, we are not at all checking anywhere whether there is a manual stoppage. See, what happens is you have a process, you deploy it, the process gets executed in the job through the jobs page, and if there is a proper execution, it will execute, right? Now actually how it is executing, it is executing the same piece of code only there, correct? Now suddenly somebody goes onto the jobs page and they go ahead and stop it. Okay, now let me execute it, you will be able to see. So I'm going to go ahead and execute the same piece of code. So this is from the jobs page I'm executing. Okay, before that I need to change it to an attended mode. Oh, sorry, unattended mode only. No, it will still execute. So jobs page, I'm going to jobs. Right, I'm going to start. So which means I'm going to start. So it is executing this piece of code, correct? That is there and deployed in the orchestrator. So it is the first message. I'm going ahead and stopping the job. Okay, it asks me, are you sure you want to stop the job? I say yes. Okay, the job goes to stopping status. Okay, but still the display is there. So which means this particular process, the first step is getting executed. The second step is also getting executed. And that's it. Actually, my program is completing, right? But still it did not stop the job. So what? And then it says successful. Okay, Actually, we stopped at the second step itself, right? We stopped at this particular point. When it was executing this only, I stopped. So in reality, it should have stopped at this particular step and it should not have executed this, correct? But that does not happen because we are doing these two particular entities separately. So what happens is this piece of code is there and it is executing, but we are not at all anywhere checking whether the job has been manually stopped or not, okay? Which was a manual intervention. But here there is no manual intervention. Automatically it gets executed, right? So there is one activity where always you have to introduce in your code when you are which means a process is there. You're always going to execute it via a job. So all processes need to check whether manually a job was stopped or not. Okay, so always you need to introduce this in your activities or in your process. Okay. We'll see it in the other example. You'll be able to understand. Okay. So when you're connecting between whatever, we'll see it with a different example. So you'll be able to understand. But just for idea, I'm telling you. Okay. So what actually happens is always you need to introduce a should stop in your particular program. So we are actually not going to stop with one set of operations, right? If you're going to do data processing, you'll be processing one data and you'll be coming back and taking the next data, coming back and taking the next data. So accordingly, you will be doing. So when you are coming back to take the next transaction, you need to always make sure you check a should stop. Okay. So what does a should stop actually check? It will check whether the job was manually stopped by someone. Was there a manual intervention from the orchestrator page? So if there was a manual intervention, then it needs to stop that particular job or stop the execution there. It should not go for the next activity. Okay, so which means if there was a no manual intervention, it should go to the next activity. A should stop will return a Boolean variable. So it will say, yes, somebody stopped it. No, somebody did not stop it. So it will return a Boolean. So Control K, I'm going to say flag stop. Okay, so here I will be checking. So there's a Boolean variable that has been created. So here I will be checking. So let me go and delete this particular connector. So we will bring this here. So here I will be checking whether the flag was stopped. So if the flag is equal to stop, if it is true, then I will stop the execution. If it is false, which means nobody has stopped it, I will go and execute the particular next set of processes. Okay. So I will go ahead and execute the next set of processes. So what actually now it will happen is, if after every step, not after every step, so basically you will introduce the should stop when it is getting the next transaction. Okay. So when you're doing repetitive steps, so before getting the next transaction, you have to introduce a should stop and check if there was a true condition or a false condition. If it is a true condition, you will be stopping it there. If it is a false condition, you will go and do the next transaction. So let me go and publish it in the orchestrator. Publish. So back to our tenant packages, make it to active, upgrade, right? So automations, you can execute it from anywhere. I'm going to the jobs page and I'm executed so that you can view it. So we have the current version of 1.0.6. Okay, it is running. The first message will be displayed. Okay, right? Here I'm going to go ahead and do the stopping. Are you okay? Now what is going to happen is the moment I go and click on this, it will go to the code and the code is going to check whether a should stop is there or not. sorry, the code is going to check whether a should stop is, that is there defaultly designed in your code, right? So the moment I go and click on welcome orchestrator, this, so after welcome orchestrator, this is the condition that we have written in our code. A should stop condition will be checked. So if you see, as the moment you say a should stop condition is checked and somebody has been manually stopped it, it says true, somebody has stopped it, so the code will not execute. If it is no should stop has been there, then the code will execute to the next set of options. Okay, so that is what a should stop will be doing. Ideally, for all workflows that you are designing, you need to have a should stop to be introduced, because a should stop is going to be, because every time a process is going to be executed via a job only. Okay, so always whenever you're going to do a process automation, check for should stop activity is a must that will be introduced. It will return a boolean output, and you have to check between the boolean output based on the conditions. You will be fetching your next transaction, or you'll be fetching the next set of activities. Okay, so now coming back to your job statuses. So you have a pending state where the robot is trying to establish a connection. Then you have a running state which will say the robot is currently executing a particular process. Successful, the robot has finished running and executing the process. Faulted is there is a exception that is being thrown. Stopping is there is a stop, somebody has stopped it, so you have clicked on the stop. There is another button called kill, which means a stop and a kill. What is the difference between a stop and a kill? Okay, certification question, interview question. What is the difference between a stop and a kill is, stop is if you have 10 steps. Okay, say suppose you are currently stopping it here. Okay, you're currently stopping it here. Okay, what actually it will do is, it will come and check to the next stop, and then only it will stop. Okay, so which means if you're executing first transaction, it will execute the information until the should stop, and then here only it will check the condition. Okay, so if you have 10 steps, if you're stopping at the 5th step, it will still execute 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and then it will check for the should stop, and then it will stop. But a kill is going to be, if you are doing it as the 5th step, it will stop at the 5th step itself. It will not go ahead and execute the 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, that is the difference between a stop and a a stop and a kill. So a stop is going to be whenever you have a stop button invoked. A terminating option is going to be whenever you have killed a particular thing. So killed is going to be, you're killing the process. So which means it should not execute beyond that step. So that is what it will do on the kill. So it will automatically, if you're stopping at the fifth, if you're killing at the 5th step, it will stop the execution at the 5th step itself. If you're stopping at the 5th step, it will execute that entire transaction first. So if there are, for one transaction, if you have 10 activities, it will go until the 10th activity. Only from the next data processing, it will stop. Okay. So that is what is the difference between a stop and a kill, right? So terminating is going to be when you have actually used the kill button. Suspended is going to be like intermediately the process is being suspended. So it is not going to be executing, and there is some kind of an error where a user intervention is required. So until the user comes and resolves that particular issue, the job will be suspended, which means that particular process will not run. Okay, and then resumed is nothing but when you have killed a particular process. Okay, so those kind of scenarios you can go and resume a particular job. It is in the stopped state or in a faulted state. You can go and resume that particular particular thing. Stopped is going to be when it stops, this will be the stopping state, and after that it will be stopped, right? So whenever you do the kill button, so at that time you're going to have the stopped stage. Whenever you do the stop button, it will still go to successful only. Okay, so when you do, you can check it for yourself every time. Whenever you're going for the interviews, or whenever you're going for certifications, make sure you identify what happens in the real-time scenario, just as I showed you practically, right? So if I'm stopping, what happens? After stopping, once the job is stopped, it will go to successful. In case I kill it, it will say terminating, and it will go and say it has stopped. It will not go to successful. Okay, so which are the job statuses? You can restart. So there's a job status called restart. So you can go and restart a faulted job. You can go and you cannot restart a stopped job. So those are the mismatches. I mean, the tricks that you need to see before you go and attend your certification or your interviews. Because with this status itself, you'll have a lot of questions, right? So triggers also we saw. Anything that you want to schedule it, we are going to have it as a trigger. So a trigger will be created for a particular process, and it will be creating ad hoc jobs, not ad hoc, scheduled jobs on that particular scenario that we have seen. So if we have created a trigger for the process to execute every 1 hour, every 1 hour a new job will be created. Okay, and the first time you have to manually trigger a trigger. Okay, you have to manually start the trigger after creating. Right.